Hello, everybody. Welcome to to Rebreak Radio, episode 42. My name is Dennis, and today I'm joined by Freja.
Yo,
So this entire episode is happening because you are basically the only one who watches this show. Um,
whoa.
why are we doing this? What's happening today?
Okay, so I listened to the last episode. I haven't listened to this show for a bit, and then I saw uh, that that episode go up, and I was like, interesting subject. And you know, I listened to it at work, and then I wholeheartedly agreed with the both of you, but especially you, Dennis, on just the subject of where Pokemon games sorta needs to head. Uh, Not specifically, perhaps, that they ought to go in exactly the direction of, you know, action adventure games, but perhaps that they need to do something else with their things than turn-based role-playing games.
Hmm.
Especially since their turn-based role-playing games is the epitome of simplistic,
Yeah,
like to the point that it doesn't even have an interesting gameplay feature anymore.
yeah. That was the thing. Like as I was playing Crown Tundra, it was just like there's nothing here anymore. Like it's just okay. Pink Band Lin in the chat says I need Freya's opinions on my Gengar idea. Do you remember that?
On the thing just being Gengar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Like saving assets and everything. Just Gengars. We'll make them all different recolors. It will be like in the old days of Street Fighter, where just Ken and Ryu are the same character. You swap heads. We will do the same thing, but we will do it on Mortal Kombat level. You know, where Scorpion and Sub Zero is just straight up the same guy, but one is yellow and one is blue.
Yeah. But then like multiple games later, we'll make differentiate them a little bit.
Oh yeah. Like purple Gengar has, the spooky stuff, and then red Gengar is like a nice guy, and then green Gengar has a hat.
Yes. That's perfect. So let's get go into a little more detail. What did you like about? Let's start with Carl's pitch first. What
Car-
caught you about it?
Carl's idea is a lot more realistic. On the notice that Nintendo will never actually drop Pokemon. They will ever never actually drop Pokemon unless Pokemon, hits a wall, which it most likely will not. It's one of the pillar stones of gaming these days and has been since its inception.
Yeah.
It has been in the hearts of kids and now it's in the hearts of adults everywhere. Surely, now that we who grew up with Pokemon have evolved our views of what is a good game to a few different niches, we can all realize that maybe the modern Pokemon games aren't that great. But then when you go back to the older ones, as mentioned before by Carl, they don't really pose any challenge since it's either that you will KO your opponent's Pokemon in 2 hits,
Mm.
or they will do the same to you. It's either or, like almost entire game.
Yeah, like that's the strategy of Pokemon. It's like if you can't do it in one hit, you'll do it in two. And
Yes.
if you realize that, oh, I'm not gonna get this in one or two hits, then that's when you change Pokemon so that you can do it in one or two hits.
Yeah. And like every single time there's a new move or Pokemon introduced in the games these days, you rarely care about, like, oh, but what are their stats? These days you don't care about stats to such a degree. in like the competitive scene. Since I know that neither one of you really pulled up the competitive scene, the only really depth that you find these days are strategic plays with a Pokemon's abilities. Like if a specific Pokemon can have this one specific ability, have these two specific traits, like they have the type of, I guess, poison and water, not a especially rare one, but maybe they have a cool unique ability that slightly differs how they are played. And then they maybe have one cool new move that is like, oh, it's surf, but it deals 20 less damage, but can now inflict poison or something like that. That's the only real new things that are applied to Pokemon combat wise. Like the biggest changes recently have been, the Mega Evolutions, the special moves, and of course, Gigantamaxing. And those are there as a response to, if you go back, like pre Mega Evolution stages, like that's Generation 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So pre that one, people tended to complain a lot more than these days on how easy Pokemon were. Like that there were nothing really there. And if you look in Japan, where Pokemon is a lot more prevalent, but the fact that they have direct responses to them, but it was actually most likely America that had the greatest voice in this entire thing, since Nintendo doesn't listen to a lot of of their consumers in a lot of ways. Like they don't usually respond to feedback in a open statement. They usually just listen to it, might implicate it in further things and so forth,
Yeah, they
so
don't
on.
make reactive games or
Yeah,
reactive
yeah.
things.
Which I think is great because
Yeah.
it allows them to not do stupid stuff like a lot of reactive developers do these days, where the entire community complains about this one thing, and surely this entire community plays this game a lot more than you, the developer, does. Even though you are the developer, there will be people out there that play your games more than you do. However, they might not know what is best for this game.
Yeah.
Neither might you. But then again, it might be better if you are a less reactive one to lean back, look at the numbers, and actually realize what a game needs. And I'm really happy Nintendo has kept that personality, like that view of things. Surely it's a bit, regressive in certain other areas. And if they do miss, they miss with like kilometers away from the target. But still, they do hit these days in a lot of their games. Sadly, Pokemon is not one of them. Since I mean, I'm a Pokemon fan, but I haven't bought a Switch yet. My partner owns one, but even though he has one, I have looked at it and I saw when I was playing Ring Fit Adventure that there was Pokemon's Sword and Shield, and the new DLC had released, and I looked at it and I went, "No, I'm fine." And that's not supposed to be the feeling that you should play on
Yeah.
when it comes to Pokemon. It's
Yeah.
like it's crack cocaine of games. Like you can go away from it and you're like, I'm fine. But you can have the most like busy life in the world. If you played Pokemon when you were a kid and you still did it like throughout your teens and you did it a bit when you were an adult and you still do it, but you put it away because you only play for like a year or two maybe, you will fucking respond when they announce a new Pokemon game.
Yeah.
That's the nostalgia just gripping you by the throat and choke slamming you into the ground.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. When people say that Nintendo had a hard Game Freak specifically, since they are the main studio that develops Pokemon
Yeah.
games these days.
That's a
Uh,
common misconception, by the way. Nintendo doesn't actually make Pokemon,
yeah,
and they
they
don't
own
own
Pokemon.
they own part of Pokemon.
Yes, the
I think it's
Pokemon
even. I
company
think
mainly owns
it's.
it.
Is it 50 or 33%?
I think it's 50.
Yeah. So yeah, like everything Pokemon is not made by Nintendo. Um, and yeah, so Nintendo just publishes some Pokemon games. But yeah, continue.
Yeah. You're entirely correct, and people don't seem to know that. Um, and the sad part about that is that Game Freak were really goddamn good at making Game Boy games in general. Like if you look at what they have made, like they made freaking Wario Land. That's that's some of the greatest Game Boy games there has ever been. Um, and they made Pokemon, and Pokemon in of itself is actually a programming masterpiece when it comes to the Game Boy Color, since it reused so many sprite structures, almost like about a fourth of all Pokemon just have other Pokemon's sounds slightly twisted.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I think Charizard and Rhyhorn are pretty similar if I remember correctly.
yeah. And like,
And it wasn't until Generation 6 that they updated the
yeah,
Pokemon Girls.
yeah, they just changed them so that they actually, have new ones. So yeah, it took them that long because it was just reusing assets. And you and I, as games developers, knows that reusing assets is like one of the best things you can do.
Mm.
Perhaps not because of time and all that. You do it because of time, of course, but there is also that one feature of you can put time into other more important things. Uh, Pokemon growls are not the most important thing in the world, even though I love weird ones like Cricketoo and whatever. Um,
Yeah, Generation 4 had some really weird
Out
ones.
there,
Yeah.
they're out there. Um, and let's just go through just a single line of the generational gaps before we go into Carl's idea and your idea of what a new Pokemon game needs to introduce to make them more special. Just looking back at what Pokemon games happened. We have our first generation Pokemon game, of course. And that's just going to be our footnote. Excuse me for anyone that hasn't played Pokemon. Sorry, this is not the episode for you. Um, Second generation happens. People don't remember what happened when the second generation Pokemon games were announced, but the fact that they announced two additional types, the fact that you could play the entire game and then you could go back to Kanto, like the
Yeah.
previous place, and just play every single gym again, and then fight the even better person than the Pokemon Master.
Yeah, and the
You
fact
could
that
fight,
there were changes too. Like some gyms had another gym leader, and
yeah,
like 2 years had actually passed in universe.
yes, and like places were a bit different now. Places that were under construction in blue, red, yellow, and green were now finished. Uh, Things had progressed, and there were now a day and night cycle. In Crystal, you even had to now the choice of playing a girl or boy. There were a radio station, not much big of a thing. Um, and I will skip most of the graphical output of these games. I will barely mention them. Um, and I will also not mention things like HMs becoming HMs becoming copies of TMs, also known as TMs become infinite use. I will also skip that. Um, but that, like, the friendship is added as a feature. All of these things allowed you to play Pokemon Silver and Gold, and you did not only feel like it was just another Pokemon game. It was hyped up to such a manic degree, not only because it was, the new Pokemon game, mainly because it was a new Pokemon game, but because, it added stuff. And it's still remembered as one of the most fondest ones because it was not that big yet. It doesn't have 500 different Pokemon yet. It has quite a small amount. Like Generation 2 is one of the smaller ones, right?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I mean, no. I think the smallest one was probably Gen 6.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, Gen 6 was really small.
Probably because they exhausted a lot of Pokemon ideas in Gen 5.
Oh yes, oh yes. Also, the entire skip to 3D. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but yes, so that happens in Generation 2. Then you go to Generation 3, and no new types are added, and no pre-evolutions. Like Generation 2 had added new evolutions, like both earlier and later, to a multitude of Pokemon. They had added new typings to old Pokemon and given them new moves. And so old stuff was still accounted for. Sort of the same thing in the third generation, but not a lot of things happened other than, Game Boy Advance. It looks cool. Um, that was about it, really. It didn't do that much of a big change when it came to gameplay features, other than that it added uh, abilities, which was a huge change in combat. The main gameplay of the game
Mm.
had now it didn't only have the types, it didn't only have the moves and the HP and the stats. It also had a feature, like a new fifth feature that allowed you to, structure your team around that stuff. Like, I have a thing with arena traps, so now you can't escape or whatever. Stuff like that. It was a new feature and it has changed Pokemon forever. However, Generation 4 comes along,
And was
and
awesome. Generation 4 is still my favorite generation.
oh yeah, it's hugely underrated. If you look back on it, Generation 4 is a thing that we should be thankful that it happened, because it's the progression of mainly the game trying to be good. Like Pokemon Blue and Red and Yellow were themselves. They were a good game. Like they were set up as what they were for their time. Um, Silver, Gold, and Crystal set up to improve on that. The third generation, like that includes the remakes, only attempted to, expand upon what worked and add one singular really cool thing to it, which was the Pokemon abilities. And then fourth gen comes along. Fourth gen is so weird if you look at it. Like what they did was crazy. They flipped all of how the stats worked. Like they went from, okay, you know how they're associated with types? Now they are associated with physical or special. They did that. They did a lot of the, back to the graphics again. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but even though I'm a graphical artist, um, that was a huge change. What was mainly a big old one there was they went back to what the second generation did. They went back to adding things to old things to make them feel great again. Like they updated every single Pokemon in the entire game. They gave certain Pokemon better stats. They gave certain Pokemon that were never used new cool abilities. Certain Pokemon who didn't, have any good features about them were given new special evolutions, just like they
Mm.
had been given in the second generation. And I don't get it why that generation of Pokemon games were disliked later on, because they are a huge fan favorite when it comes to, if you look back at the time when they came out, and then you compare that to when the third generation came out. I like the third generation, even though people complain about the amount of water. I don't give a shit. Um, fourth generation is great.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it did.
mean, the things I love about Gen 4 is, well, the new evolutions.
Yeah,
I love, and that's one of the things that I don't like about Pokemon now is that they don't make new evolutions anymore.
yeah,
The starters were really good designs, even up to their evolutions.
yeah,
A lot of their Pokemon designs were really, really, really good. There were a crap ton of legendaries and mythical Pokemon, and the world in that game just felt like maybe I just played it at the right time, but it just felt so mythical. Like there were mysteries around every corner. You went to somewhere in the world, and there was something to be discovered there. Like I
yeah,
remember I remember finding the door in Canlave City that you can't go into. And it says like the door is slammed, like the door is shut, like you can't even move it. So shut
yeah,
is the door, you know. And then I got like an action replay to get the Darkrai event,
yeah, yeah.
and you can go into that room in there, and you have a nightmare and you meet Darkrai. Like that was awesome.
Yeah, that
Um,
was like the origin of because that's a thing people don't get, is that Pokemon has technically has DLC since the third generation. They
mm,
were never really well implemented. Like the DLCs themselves, yes. How they were implemented, like the fact that you needed to connect to, the DS interconnective web system was pretty shit.
yeah, and
Uh,
I mean, I said that I used an action replay to get it because the event,
yeah,
like, how would you transmit these events realistically in a like in that age? Like, I couldn't get it legitimately even if I wanted to, you know.
yeah,
So and well, the action replay also let me play the Arceus event, which wasn't even revealed ever released. So that was also pretty cool.
yeah.
And yeah, like Team Galactic, I thought they were pretty cool as well. Dialga and
Uh,
Palkia felt just generally super epic, and Giratina was also really cool, and the distortion world was also awesome. Like pretty much every part of Gen 4 was amazing. And then we got the Gen 2 remakes, which are legitimately probably some of the best Pokemon games ever made.
oh, easy my favorite Pokemon games ever. Uh, those are like they take once again the largest Pokemon games if you count like content.
Mm.
Because what people don't seem to remember is that ever since third gen, there has been post game content. Technically, second gen did that first with releasing the entirety. Oh, you can go back to Kanto now.
Mm.
But third gen added a bunch of stuff that you could do after you beat Elite Four. And then fourth generation added a whole lot. Like Platinum a bit more than Pearl and Diamond, but still though, a bunch of stuff to do after you beat Elite Four.
Oh yeah, and wait a minute. Lynn mentions in the chat the mines in Gen 4, how you could go underground and like have your own room, and like with you could like decorate it, and then you could play with people. That was Gen
Yeah,
4, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It began in the second, like in the third gen. They always added a gimmick. By then, it was just this is now a new feature to Pokemon games, which was your secret base. And then in the fourth gen, they went like, what about secret base again? But these times, it's also underground network.
Mm.
Uh,
I
I thought,
remember using the touchscreen to mine those like what was it, like you mined some like gems or like
yeah,
some like
you
rocks
could
and
get
whatever. I don't remember exactly.
That's how you got fossils in that game.
Mm.
That was pretty great. Like you could get fossils from any previous generation as well. Um, that was a thing though. If I don't think you remember this, perhaps, but back then, if you do, please correct me. But back then, when Pokemon Pearl and Diamond was released, and people got to know that Electivire, Magmortar, and Tangrowth and such was a thing, they more or less looked back 2 generations. They looked back at the second generation and they went, wait, is this a pattern? In the sense that are they going to release new evolutions
Every
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 yeah
other generation.
yeah
Technically, kind of they did in Gen 6 because they did mega evolutions, but it's kind of it's a kind of sort of thing.
yeah so that's the thing, like people looked at that and went, is that how they are going to continually make Pokemon relevant? Like, because Tangela was never relevant outside of Gen 1. But in Gen 1 they were some of the best, rap users, but that was it. That was it. That was the only use to use a Tangela. Even though I love them. Sorry, Tangela, you suck. um, uh, Meanwhile, Generation 5 comes out and does the ballsiest move in Pokemon history. Straight up goes, yo, we're not gonna feature any of the old Pokemon. And I went, okay, cool. I like this. And then some people went, okay, so they don't even have the old Pokemon in the actual storage of the game, because that was added, later in Pokemon White and Black 2.
No,
That is,
all
did
the other
they?
Pokemon were there. You just had to play the entire game first.
Yeah,
In
and
the
then
post game, the
they
Pokemon were there.
yeah. So in the beginning of the entire game, they weren't there, and then they were added like later on when you had beaten the game, right?
Mm.
They came in strange seasons and such, like not in real
Yeah.
world, but like in the game, they said today is this day, which means that these Pokemon will be here, and weird stuff like that, if I remember correctly. Anyway, the fact that they went, this is gonna be a new gen with new Pokemon, made a lot of people go, oh, are they going to make like this is the first section of Pokemon, and now they're gonna make the next one? Like they are going to be like Gen 1 through 4 is going to be this bracket, and now we're going to start bracket number 2. And some people thought that was a thing. Obviously, it isn't. Um, some people thought that that was the case. And to be honest with you, I have never been the type of person to scream, but now I can't catch a drowsy in any of the other games. I'm never that type of person. However, I do feel that it's a bit weird if they cannot be, transferred from modern games. Like back in then, fucking fine. It's fine. It's fine that I cannot get my Pikachu from Pokemon Yellow to uh to White and Black 2. That's fine. But then I cannot get Pokemon uh from certain things like Sword and Shield. Is kind of but that's me. That I think is a bit
Well,
with
you can. You have
modern games like
Pokemon
that.
Home now, right?
Mm. Yeah, you do, but don't they? That's not compatible with Sword and Shield, right?
So through Pokemon Home, you can you can carry anything that you had in Pokemon Bank into Pokemon Home, and
Okay.
Pokemon Bank was compatible with Poke Transporter from Generation 5,
Yes.
and Generation 5 is compatible with the Pokemon transfers from Gen 4, and Gen
Yeah.
4 could get Pokemon from Gen 3. So technically, you can get anything from Gen 3 forward if you put in the effort for it. But I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like now with like the Pokemon candy, it's like just catch a new one and give it diabetes. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but if we're gonna go back to it, Generation 6 comes in. It's the first big Super 3D game, um, which was one of the best ways for Nintendo to more or less go, okay, cool. Now every single Pokemon we have will be in 3D. That means that we just can reuse their freaking asset wherever we want. That is great. Now we never have to make another cool new sprite for every other new game.
mm,
Uh, so that's a bunch of time, saved. Once again, reuse assets. Um, however, they didn't really seem to be that keen on that one. People complained a lot, when they made their first 3D models that, they only have these animations and such. But people were fine with it. Then when it happened the exact same time when they made, Sun and Moon, and then they just remade the same assets for Sword and Shield, even though they had more or less to remake them. Um, People have complained about that they haven't, expanded upon it since then,
mm,
and certain people do, defend them as you did last time, and I do also defend them in that, every single time you need to give a set of Pokemon new moves. It's a lot of Pokemon
mm,
that needs new moves. Like if every single one of them needed to have a jump animation, that is 880 new jump animations to make. That
exactly.
is a lot.
Mm,
However, I should note that they have an old rival, and I'm not saying it's a rival because it's an old rival. And that
Digimon.
is, yeah, straight up Digimon. Because Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth has more than 360 Digimon, and every single one of their moves has a unique animation. And they have more than 10, like more than 12 unique moves. Um, and that is kind of a thing to then segue away from the Pokemon games that has been to the fact that the Pokemon games these days is 100% in your corner of your argument, Dennis, compared to Carl's. Since Carl's argument is that we ought to improve upon what already exists, that we should perhaps go back to the roots of RPGs to make them into maybe 4 Pokemon each out in the same battle, and they have different moves and they're more like spells than anything else. Um, Still keep the types. I think 100% Carl is correct on that one. Keep the types. They are what makes Pokemon its core. And then just, go bananas more or less with the RPG structure and make items a bit less and make, less damage for each character. So, you don't one shot someone or two shot someone.
mm,
That is a way to do it. And Carl is the more realistic in their tone. I think that if Pokemon ever will grow, that is the way things will happen. Perhaps not the 4 team battle things, but perhaps a bit more, intricate combat. I don't think they will go that far beyond it because here's the thing: Pokemon will not change its 4 move styles. The last time they did it, it was Sun and Moon with their special moves. That was about it. That was about it, really.
mm.
And
The C moves.
yeah, and where are those now?
Yeah, that's the thing that I don't like about the gimmick that they introduced in every game with Mega Evolutions, Z moves, and now Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing.
Yeah,
Is that it just feels like it's there to be flashy one time and then it's just gone entirely.
yeah, like
Like they kept Mega Evolutions in Sun and Moon, but both Mega Evolutions and Z moves are gone in Sword and Shield, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Because I don't think I've ever seen them in that game,
Neither have I.
which is a shame because Mega Evolution and like even if you had Mega Evolutions in it, they would look just puny next to Gigantamaxing.
Yeah, yeah, quite a bit at that. Because like Mega Evolutions was a big leap forward. And if they would have kept Mega Evolutions and they would have just added more of them as time went on, and perhaps given some Pokemon different ones, such as Charizard, um, then it could have become a new feature of the game. Like it could have been a mainstay part of the game.
Exactly.
That,
Like I felt like Mega Evolutions and Z moves were like solid additions to the core gameplay of Pokemon,
yeah,
while Dynamaxing is a replacement of those two things.
yep,
So they kind of both go against each and in a way, Dynamaxing is a merge of those two. It is
yeah,
a more concise version of it, but it's just replacing a lot of work and a lot of lore and stuff that was put into the first two iterations of it. So yeah,
yeah, because you will never see it again if we know, Game Freak. Um, so even though I know that Carl's choice of toning down the numbers, that is a thing I agree on. Please, Nintendo, if you're listening, which you might not be, but if you ever do, tone down your numbers, please. Because as of the moment, the entirety of PvP is either you're going to stall someone out in such a manic degree that it's not fun, or you're going to just sweep the entire enemy team. It's either or.
but that
And I know,
that's the thing. Like, I think the reason why Pokemon works the way it does right now, like one or two hits, is because the game isn't fun if you have to do it more times than that. Like even if you make an attack on a Pokemon and you get like 33% of their health gone, you immediately feel the tedium of having to do the same thing you already did two more times.
yeah,
So I feel like they do it this way because they know it's boring otherwise.
yeah. I mean, they also know that it's sort of what people remember, and that even though people went like, "Oh my god, what is this mega evolution? This is stupid. This is not what happened when I played Pokemon." And then when people came back and played it, they freaking loved it. So not everyone, not everyone, but most people who tried to then play the game liked the game. So I think that it was a healthy addition to the game, and it was a healthy addition to the series. And I'm a bit sad that it's not in there, that it's not gonna be in there, and that it's gone, and that Pokemon has more or less just dwelt. Because back in the day, like third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation, and sixth generation, all had a you know a background feature to them. Like third generation had secret bases, fourth generation had new secret bases. Fifth generation, like third generation, also had the beauty contests and such, so on and so forth.
For
And the and
what was the thing that they did in fourth generation? That was also a beauty contest, right?
yes, and
Underrated feature. I thought that was very fun.
I thought it was really fun, but it's it's a background feature that's not going to
Mm,
return in other games unless they do it for nostalgic reasons. And personally, I think it was really sad that they didn't keep secret bases and the fashion things, since
yeah.
you could just expand on those instead of replacing them with other stuff, like the dream mechanic in fifth edition, like in the fifth edition of Pokemon, like the fifth gen,
Mm,
there was this dream machine system. Remember that one?
no.
No, it's understandable. It wasn't recognizable or rememberable.
Wait, which game did you
Uh,
say?
in White and Black, you could, poof into your Pokemon's dreams.
Uh, no. So interesting story. I played all of the Pokemon games, and
Mhm.
then when Black and White came out, I was too old for Pokemon. So
Okay.
I skipped that one, and then I got into X and Y, and then I played Black and White retroactively. Um, but it was kind of a chore to play it because it was going back to like now when I wanted Pokemon to be 3D and all, it was just boring to go backwards. So I never got to Black and White 2. And I have started playing Black and White 2 like 3 times now, and I've just never proceeded.
I understand you though. Um, but with how these things are working, Pokemon is heading towards that pit of um, turning their own the more gameplay features of their game, the combat and all of that. They're slowly turning that into the same type of thing that they did with the background features. They
Mm,
are turning it more or less into a set of semi-functional one-time features that will never appear again.
mm. So
And
I've
that's kind of sad.
I thought it was weird that because Generation 6 doesn't have any of the like beauty stuff or anything, right? Contests.
No, not really, no.
And in the X and Y anime, Serena is a contest trainer.
Yep.
And I always thought that was really weird. But like one of my I've always had this dream of like a huge Pokemon game where you could go and play in like all the different regions, and you could become any, like you could be a Pokemon trainer going for the gyms. You could be like a contest trainer, or any like maybe you could try to become a gym leader, whatever. Like I would love to see a Pokemon game like that, but that would
Oh yeah,
be hell to
big
create.
time. Yeah, and it's what is considered too much. Um,
Oh yeah, the puffin making.
yeah,
That was great.
uh, yeah, and it's more or less just taking the candy making from third gen and making it a bit more tedious. Um, but
So
so
do you think before you again, like I'm so into the Gen 4 conversation right now.
yeah, yeah.
Um do you think they would bring all of this back in a Gen 4 remake?
Oh, I hope so.
Because
Like
I
big
mean,
time.
the other remakes have been pretty faithful.
Yeah.
Even the Gen 3 remake, I don't remember anything being missing in that one.
No, they added stuff, if anything.
Mm,
They added more of a story. They added new features, blah blah. The one that is not, entirely in its soul a remake would be um, the Pikachu I Chose You and the Eevee I Chose You ones. But they do feature such nice gameplay features that I think that they still stand out as some really nice games.
Mm.
Um,
You mean Let's Go
I
Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee?
Yeah, those are the ones. Those are
Yeah.
the ones. But let's let's discuss your gameplay idea then. Um, Yours was based on a more, combat active game where every single Pokemon would have, a few moves on their own and they would have a certain structure to them. This will never be a mainline game. Mainline games will never be this, but let's dream for a bit
Let's
that we
dream.
could that we could at least get this one game.
I am inviting all of the apparently 0 viewers, but I know there's at least 1 viewer. YouTube Studio is telling me there are 0 viewers. That I'm inviting all of you into this dream
Yes.
that is this amazing Pokemon game. Please continue.
Yeah. So your idea was that more or less you take a third camera perspective combat game, as seen in certain more recent releases, such as the Final Fantasy VII remake, and turn that into your Pokemon game. And some people might scream at you for doing that because they go, "What the fuck? How would you ever imagine this to be a thing? How could you possibly imagine this? Even with the starting Pokemon, like if you would go 365 original Pokemon, that would be like a string set. If they would have a light combo string, they would have a heavy set combo string, a special move, air moves, a dash, a jump, and an 8 directional roll, and at least, running animations. That's more than 2,190 loops that you need to animate. That is a disturbing amount of animation loops that should move into actual key fragments of the game.
Mm.
However, when people say that, they don't seem to know about all of the weird ass third person arena anime games out there, which features up to 120 characters who each have like 40 moves. I'm talking.
But are they good though?
Uh, no, not in that sense. However, they are only made, for fans of the anime. They're never meant to be good. They're meant to be cinematic and weird.
Made
Uh,
for the M&A fans.
yeah, for the Abadabada fans. But speaking on the part that you mentioned, was that Pokemon could have similar movesets, like for example Charizard and Dragonite. That was one of your examples.
Mm.
The same for Squirt and Wartortle. They could just have the same moves, but you maybe change the finisher for each one of them.
Mm.
Like you make it so that Charmeleon, differing from Charmander, is that Charmeleon ends their heavy string with a fiery uppercut, like Fire Punch or something. And that's about it. And now you squeeze down that number of more than 3,000 animation strings down to perhaps maybe 133 Pokemon. Like, let's split it. 133 Pokemon could share the same moves.
Mm.
And,
I don't even think you need to do the finisher thing. Like, if you look at obviously way lesser iterations, but in The Last of Us Part Two,
yeah,
um, you play as Ellie and one other character. And they both have different walk and run animations, and probably
Yes.
other animations too, but like vaulting over objects and like um I think also like holding weapons and stuff like that. Those are animations that they share with each other.
Yeah.
And as long as the walk and run animations are different, people won't think about the fact that these more scarcely used animations are shared.
Yeah. That is a thing that will become, really structured around things like, movement loops, such as, seeing a Pidgey fly compared to a Pidgeotto or things like that. But if one actually thinks about things, stuff like a
Lynn says you can't do finishers in Pokemon because then the Pokeys don't fade; they just die.
you, it's a finisher from a move string, not a finisher of the game. Not a Mortal Kombat finisher. That's not gonna be the thing. It's just a combo finisher. Um, like Street Fighter V, one of the current big fighting games. Not a good one, according to me, but still though, has more than 820 unique moves. And each one of those has a multitude of downscaling, like what does this combo into? Maybe not go that deep, but hey, still look at like freaking Naruto Ultimate Ninja Shippuden. I haven't played that game, but I have played previous games of those when I was a teen. And I know for a fact that if that's the same goddamn game, if they haven't increased that game, they sure as heck just have more than 2,000 moves in that game. And if you would get Nintendo money just poured into like Pokemon money. We're talking Pokemon money here, Dennis.
Yeah.
It,
I
it,
mean,
it's a this
they have the money to contract people and just make animations.
yeah, for like 1,500 of them, easy. And then you have each Pokemon might have a good skill set. Yes, each Pokemon might be faster or slower depending on how large they are. Certain Pokemon are maybe built around reach, such as Hitmonlee, with the weird stretchy legs
Mm.
and all that stuff. And that might be how you play your game. Just as you mentioned, that is a thing that so few people have actually gotten to do. Play with the Pokemon they want to play with,
Mm.
not the ones that are, competitively sound.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that was interesting. Like when Carl went through like the pillars that he thought about when he was thinking about his Pokemon revamp. Like he brought up some like things that he felt Pokemon was about, and that made me think about it as well. And I feel like Pokemon isn't about turn-based combat. Pokemon isn't about
It's experienced through turn-based combat. It's not
yeah
about turn-based combat.
yeah. Pokemon is about finding and catching and befriending and battling with these creatures that you find in the wild or that you find just anywhere in their natural habitat, and you become friends with them, and you use them in like communal activities with other players. I feel like that is what Pokemon is about.
Yeah,
um and yeah, like when you have this like very meta structure around Pokemon where like, oh, I'm using Pokemon X because it's the most viable in a battle. That goes against entirely what Pokemon is about. The reason why I use a Pikachu in every Pokemon game is because I love Pikachu.
yeah.
I
It's the
don't
same reason
care that
why I have Mr.
Pikachu
Mime.
is. I don't care that Pikachu is not viable and he dies instantly unless I overlevel him. I just want a Pikachu on my team because that's the Pokemon I want.
Yeah,
And the combat system in Pokemon has to be more designed around that you can use the Pokemon that you want, and that Pokemon is still viable.
yeah, that's why I mentioned that like maybe Charmeleon's heavy moves are slightly different in the sense that you can use Pikachu, who is maybe a smaller, a bit faster, and has this one special move, and then Raichu is not an improvement. It's just a slightly tankier and hits a bit harder, a bit slower, but
Mm.
has this other cool move that Pikachu doesn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's how you do things. That's how you do fighting games. That's how you do a bunch of these stuff. And like Nintendo is no stranger to these. They are literally no stranger to these since they made ARMS.
Arms is so brutally, criminally underplayed game.
Oh yes. Um, but this one game that you did mention, I don't think that it should have a new generation, if anything. I think it should be the first generation and straight up what you said. Go whichever direction you want to. We have made a Zelda Breath of the Wild style map that is just the Kanto region. You
I
can
don't
go where the
I don't even want the Kanto region. Like I want a new map um where and like I don't want the original 150 either. I want just like a selection of like 300 Pokemon from all generations. Like let's pick a balanced selection of everything and in a new region and
no see,
add some new Pokemon as well.
but see that's the thing though. Since if this would be a spin-off game, since it will never be a mainline game. If we just imagine what we could get as a spin off game where you play as a Pokemon trainer, since that is what you will be, you will not be a tactical turn based combat guy. You will be the person that actively, has a Pokemon do dashes and dodges and how they, speed up things and how when are you going to spend your dash attacks? Ooh, when are you going to do this one combo? All of that plays into the fact that, by the way, if this game is not called Pokemon Trainer, I'm getting mad. Um, since that would be a thing I feel that one of the ways you could give depth to this beyond every single goddamn Pokemon that you could play with is the fact that if you play as you have your standard as player character, um to save assets and whatever, you have your dude, you have your girl, you get to change which hair, eye, and skin color you have, and your hairstyle, I guess. And that's about it. Maybe like if you have glasses or not, bada bing, bada boom. And then all you do throughout the game is that you begin the game as a standard ass trainer, and then you can start to change your moves a slight bit in the sense that you could become something like, for example, a black belt. And if you are a black belt, your Pokemon get, fighting moves get a little bit stronger, and every other move gets a tiny bit stronger. If you're a fisherman, maybe you can, pull out the fishing rod and do a cool thing there. Um, Things like that, because that's the thing. I would love a game where you can find playstyles like this. If you already have a playstyle with that you can choose which Pokemon you want, if you can also choose which type of trainer you want to be. Perhaps not that you get to pick, straight up classes. Perhaps not a class for your trainer, but at least like which buffs do I want to give to my Pokemon? Which cool battle cries do I want to have where I go, you can do it, and they regain like 30% of their HP? things like that. I think that is really non-Pokemon-y, but it would feel great to play Pokemon as a fighting, arena fighter game with that as a feature, that you're feeling like you are playing the trainer with your cool ass Pokemon doing the cool scene that you mentioned previously, that kids usually think that
Mm.
when they play Pokemon, they think about how cool their Pokemon are doing things. That being the actual thing would be rad. And that is sort of what I think could make this game, blast through a bit, in the sense that you could have certain maps that interact a bit differently, and Nintendo has shown that they are willing to do that. Breath of the Wild, once again, is a massive just sign that they are willing to design huge maps with environmental effects and differing day and night cycles, tiny little features such as, throwing fire in the face of a bunch of goblins and they react to it.
Mm. But that's
Could
the
still,
thing. That's the thing, though. Like as I mentioned earlier, Pokemon is not made by Nintendo, and I think Pokemon would have been entirely revamped probably over a decade ago if Nintendo made Pokemon.
oh yeah,
Like we
easy.
would not like just like think about how Shigeru Miyamoto refuses to make another F-Zero because he thinks that they peaked with F-Zero GX.
Yes.
Like like that would be Pokemon. Like we wouldn't have had any Pokemon game after Gen 4 if Nintendo made Pokemon in-house.
No more Mr. Mime. Um, I think that Pokemon deserves to be made. Like, do you remember? This is a resurgence once more, but do you remember when Pokemon came out with the first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I played the GBA one, I think.
yeah, same here, and that was a huge thing. Like, just the fact that a other company made a Pokemon game. Perhaps not a core one, but they made a Pokemon game. And then there are other weird spin-offs like Detective Pikachu and
I
and
still need to
Pokemon
play.
Ranger.
I still need to play Detective Pikachu. I think from what I've seen, like the only reason I haven't played it is because I'm not really into the kind of Professor Layton kind of game.
Fully
Um,
understandable.
but just looking at the game, like I feel like it's really impressive because they took the franchise into a completely different direction.
Yeah, they designed the world building before everything else.
Yeah, like
They,
they created a world, the world that we always imagine.
yes, you know that one short? I think it's in the third Pokemon movie before everything else plays, where Pikachu and two Pichu are running around
Yeah,
in the city. You know that one?
yeah, I know that one.
That's the feeling Detective Pikachu gives you, that
Mm.
that city exists, because you can see Pidgeys nestling on top of electrical wires, like birds do. And you can see like little Pokemon shuffling around in the background. That is the feeling that more of these games need. And what the only game that I've ever played that had that, what, two games: Detective Pikachu, and then to a slight degree, a really weird spin-off game, which is Pokemon Ranger. Have you played this obscure ass game that you cannot find anymore?
I played like 30 minutes of it and I did not. I wasn't a big fan of it.
Neither were I, but I didn't have any other games, so I played it. Um, that was a weird game since you didn't catch Pokemon. You just more or less hired them to do work. Um, but you still more or less your entire game was not about catching Pokemon and battling with them. It was interacting with Pokemon in their natural environment
Mm.
and seeing what you could help them doing and ask them for help. That was the main feature of it, and surely it was weird, but it was indeed still a more world building focused game than the main live Pokemon games were. And I mean, Pokemon has shown themselves from like day one that they want to have a story and that they want to have a world that feels deep,
Mm.
but they are always, you know, stumbling over their own feet, tripping over their own feet when they are running. In the sense that whenever you play your Pokemon, I think you mentioned this like last time that when you play a Pokemon game and the big bads appear, they suddenly become the main focus of the game.
Mm.
And then when you beat those, the legendaries become the main focus of the game. And then it's back to being a kid who's trying to beat the Elite Four.
Yeah, like it's such a jarring switch.
Yeah, it
Like,
never feels connected at all.
yeah, like after you're done with that, like, okay, what just happened? I beat the Mafia and I caught the most legendary Pokemon ever. Yeah, I guess I'm just a 10-year-old kid now.
Back to trying to become the football pro, more or less.
Yeah, that's why I want the game story to just be entirely focused around that. Like, I mean, if you look at the Pokemon anime, like that story is focused around Ash becoming a Pokemon master, even though there are like these like Team Rocket was basically reduced to this villain that just shows up once every episode. Like the overarching Team Rocket doesn't really have any significant role in the anime.
Yeah,
Like the story is actually about what the game is about.
I think one game that is really old and it's not well made. It's not well made at all, Dennis. This is not a game worth playing.
Mhm.
It's a PS1 game going by the name Digimon World. That is more or less the original version of this idea. It's where you wake up as a kid one day, you are in the digital world with all the Digimon, you get a Digimon partner, and now it's up to you to go where the fuck ever you want. You can beat the big boys and you can train and you become the master of the digital world. It's more or less what you want, except it has horrible gameplay. Um, because the entirety of the fights is you pressing the button to go attack, attack. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And then the computer does whatever it wants. Uh, so it's a horrible game. Don't play it. But the idea has always been there. People want this game, and they want it so freaking badly, and it will probably not happen, sadly. But
I
maybe it
think
will.
I've
Who
wait.
knows?
Was there a Digimon game on PS2?
There was a lot of games that was Digimon on PS2.
I am 100% sure that I've played one of these games.
Yeah, and they are always sorta bad, but they are always sorta good in what they want to be. Um,
I'm trying
I
to
also
figure out which one I played because I don't know, there's just something like I remember something. Like it
yeah
is, but I can't tell you what it is. No, I
yeah.
definitely what other Digimon games are there on PS2? Digimon
Uh,
PS2.
there's a bunch of weird stuff. But I know that this this I'm going to send you later on the combat music from the Digimon game, so you can have that as an outro. But there was people have had this same idea as you, Dennis, and I'm talking like not that your cool new idea is not unique. It isn't. You're doing it really well with how you explained it, and you know the freaking soul of it because that's what people want. And it was to the point that in 2013 there was a game being made by a fan that was this game. You ran around as a kid, you could climb stuff, you could swim, you could climb up walls and trees and everything, and you had your Pokemon. They did combos. They had a light button, a heavy button, a ranged button, and a jumping button. They had little dodges, they had hitboxes, and everything. And they went down to like, I think, Tentacool in the Pokedex. And then they got the DMCA. And then they were cancelled.
What was this one called?
Pokemon Generations.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard about this.
Yes. Still made by
I'm
fans.
Pokemon Generations because there's an anime Pokemon Generations.
Yeah. Fan game could be added to it, and you'll probably find it. It doesn't look like the best. I mean, Pikachu looks like a tiny Danny DeVito, but still, it's like perhaps one of the cooler feeling ones. Like it felt great, and it was rough. It was really rough, but it still felt like the spiritual thing that you are mentioning that you want and you know that other people want. That is a thing, and it's called Pokemon Generations. uh, and it will probably never happen again. uh, but it was there for a bit, and it was cool because like flying Pokemon could fly and just dash down towards their enemies, and then but if you countered them as they flew down to attack you, they went down to the ground, and flying Pokemon were not as good on the ground. It was great. And sadly it will never happen again. Because DMCA, and now the Nintendo companies really god dang hard at never letting any fan games do anything. This was the game where you had to aim your Pokeball at the Pokemon that you wanted to hit, and they could run away, but you could chase them down. It was that type of game. It was pretty cool. And yeah, it's a bit sad that they didn't hire this person instead. And
Nintendo hire this man.
yeah, like if I could pick any fan game, any goddamn fan game, because I heard when Carl said that this game that you had in your mind, that you could go wherever and challenge any gym master in any order.
Pokemon Generations.
Yeah,
Nasty in chat.
that is a thing that so many fan made ROM hacks have already done, and they do it like well. That you could just go to any gym in any order you want to, and they function, they work. And I don't know. It's a bit sad that big games companies these days, that if they do not like your fan games, they won't hire you. Like straight up, like this person who started to make this, why don't they just hire him? I know the reasons why. I know that the reasons are, it's building standard, and it's product standard. You cannot hire someone that can slander your game. It will just attract more people who you don't want to try to gather your attention, whatever, so forth, so on. Uh, but this game was rad, even though it was rough and new and bad in so many ways. But the idea was there, and it was great. And I think personally that this game has a spot in the world. This unnamed, but it should be named Pokemon Trainer. This unnamed action RPG where your Pokemon have combos and
Well,
you as the trainer.
it's a me game, so it's not an RPG.
Yeah, but RPG in the sense that you can choose your stuff and whatever.
RPG in its actual definition,
Yes,
and not in
where you
its,
play the role
yeah.
and you do the things. You don't care about stats and stuff. It's about you playing the role of a Pokemon trainer and doing the things that they will do. Yes. Um, I think this has a home. I think this has a place in our world. And I am really sad that the Pokemon company doesn't agree.
I mean,
Um,
that's why you make an original game. Like, why didn't they just take Pokemon Generations and make it an original game?
don't know. I mean, imagine if you would a Pokemon game where we have already discussed, how combat works. But imagine then also stuff like, hey, I have a Pokemon that can swim. So now I just jump down into the water and I pull out this one Pokemon that can swim better than I can, and it's stronger than I am, so it can pull me along the water. And now I have a slightly faster swimming speed.
Hmm.
And that goes to the point of, freaking Lapras, where you sit on top of it. Um, and stuff like that. This is, I don't know. This is the stupid thing these days, that the Nintendo company are not the ones to make Pokemon because they don't know how to make good Pokemon games anymore.
That's the thing. Like, I think if Nintendo made Pokemon, they would make a hell of a good Pokemon game.
Yeah.
Like, slap the Breath of the Wild team on Pokemon and let's see what happens. Like, please, any day.
Yeah. Like anything. Because Pokemon is dying of overlapsed content bloat, as in that it doesn't have enough content in it, but it had so much content in the past that you expect it to have so much content. And then when they present the game that they're not used to make, because let's face it, Game Freak were really good at making sprite based RPGs for the Nintendo DS. They were really good at doing that. But they're not that good at making, big super duper scaled Pokemon games in the Galar region, because Sword and Shield aren't good games. They're not bad games. They're not good.
I would say they are good, they're not great.
Mm, I wouldn't call them good games. That is me. That is me. They don't get the thumbs up from me at all. Um, it's Nintendo is in this weird spot where they have so many winners. Like, so many of their series are winners, and they don't use them. And I know that they don't use them because they, would never live up to the hype of whatever. And they have so many times wanted to just, make a sequel to the thing, and then the sequel doesn't get enough love, and now nobody wants to play them.
Speaking of, buy Pikmin 3! Please, I
Yeah,
want
it's a
Pikmin
great
4!
game.
I want
But
Pikmin 4.
yeah,
Miyamoto
but
said it exists like 5 years ago.
but that's the thing. Pikmin is a good example because Pikmin has released evolutions of its own gameplay every single time. It's the thing that you love, but has evolved in some way. Meanwhile, Pokemon has never evolved. They
Hmm.
added a few things, like tiny
Which
things.
is
But
funny from a game that is about evolving.
yeah, and stuff like a better example would be something like the Mario series with how different certain games are in it.
Yeah, I mean,
And
if you look past the new Super Mario Bros. Series, basically every Mario game is different from the other.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, why can't one of their biggest, like largest brands in the entire world do the same thing? And the
Mm.
right answer is, of course, they can't, because then it wouldn't sell, because they want the safety of Pokemon being great. But here's the thing, they have the cash, they have the name, they have the resources, and they have the teams, and they have other people around them that could make great games. But one thing that Nintendo is really bad at is trying to make the same thing again and make it work. That is a thing that is noticeable in every single Pokemon game. The fact that they chose to make the same game. It works the same, but then they need to squeeze in something that doesn't need to be there. Like the Puffin game didn't need to be there. The
But
beauty
it
contest,
was fun though.
it was fun, but it didn't need to be there. It wasn't a rehaul. It wasn't a key feature in the entire game. It was just a what some people would consider a useless background memory. And that was it. And Nintendo is so great at doing that because, like, they add a star. They never do a new Star Fox game because every single one of the Star Fox games they have made has had some other feature in it. While we all know that the best type of Star Fox game is where you are zooming around in the little triangle out in space and you shoot the stuff.
But at like yeah, I get where you're coming at, but at the same time, we don't want Nintendo to become Ubisoft.
No,
Ubisoft, like
exactly.
I've said this like to other people before, like we like it has to be like commended that Ubisoft keeps spending years and years and years on new games and they end up being the same game. Like it is a skill at this point how they manage
Yeah,
to make the same game over and over again.
the answer is that they all just teleport into a different universe and take that version of Call of Duty every single time. Um, Modern Warfare and whatever. Here's the thing: Pokemon, like Nintendo in general, needs to not become Ubisoft. They don't need to become that. They need to become King of Fighters. They need to become SNK. They need to make that thing that is so high quality and the thing that you remember, but they have changed it up a bit. The gameplay looks the same and it has the same idea, but it has a new feature in it. It's not a hat that you slap onto the new Pokemon. It's a new Pokemon with new features in it. new ways to play the game. The idea is the same, but it's all changed. And Nintendo is really scared of doing that. Like really scared of doing that. And I get
Yeah,
it. They are the big. They cannot fail. Yet they have numerous amounts of times, and they have never learned.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I feel like every Nintendo game always needs a twist.
Yeah,
Like you can see that when they present each game in like a Nintendo Direct. Like, here's this, and this happens, and it's like, ooh, you know, that's the thing that's the feel that they want with every game that they reveal.
yeah,
Um, and it's gonna be really interesting. Let's see what they do with Breath of the Wild 2, because that game specifically still has the original game's map.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is going to be one of this is gonna be a really true Nintendo sequel that I don't think we've really seen before.
No. And I hope that if it is the same idea, but it's so different from the previous game, not in the sense that it has different gameplay, but
Mm,
that it feels different.
mm,
Then why? I hope that this then inspires the rest of Nintendo to become something else, to become something greater than what they are at the moment. That they look back at some of their older titles and go, "Hey, remember the second generation of Pokemon where we straight up added two new types, and we added the exact same old game to our new game? That was quite a ballsy move, don't you think? That was more or less juggling with swords and hoping things would go well. The same with Generation 4. It was going from one art style to another. And then they went, hey, guess what? We have the same weird shit as before. And like fifth generation, we're going to throw away all the old Pokemon and we're going to do these new ones. You're going to get the old ones, but you need to do this first. That is crazy. That is straight up crazy. That is a ballsy move. And Pokemon isn't ballsy anymore. It's stupid. It feels not the games in of themselves. They don't feel stupid. The way that they are designed
mm,
feels like they don't feel ballsy. They don't feel crazy. They don't feel like these. Hey, do you remember the things that you played before? Well, we have added these cool new things, and they are actually cool. It's we added a thing, and it's like a hat that it will only wear for this one generation. That is the sad current status of Pokemon,
mm.
and it's a bit sad that is the key point at the moment, and that might be the way that Pokemon will end. That might be the death of Pokemon in the end. Might be just a shadow of what it could have been, because it could have kept on doing the weird stuff. It could have kept on evolving things, like straight up that, like they could have kept on adding core features, like they could have kept mega evolutions, but they didn't, and now things are as they are.
I feel like that was a pretty good note to end on.
Yeah.
So yeah, where can people find you?
I am at Salty Job on Twitter. I rarely post things. If I do, it tends to be art stuff or role playing game based stuff, since that's what I work with.
Cool. Yeah, you can find me at Dennis underscore Lofgren on Twitter. Um, yeah, I post my hot takes. That's what I do.
I think those hot takes are pretty good sometimes and sometimes questionable. But aren't they? Isn't that a hot take?
So what's a questionable hot take?
A questionable hot take would be your insane love for the Fast and Furious series and your weird tones on going like, okay, but here's the thing though. Whenever you start ranting about them, because no person should take the Fast and Furious series that seriously.
Dude, have you seen them?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, but dude, they're great. They're great.
Okay.
I Furious 7 is one of my favorite movies ever. Yeah. Um so yeah, I'm going to end it by saying bye Pikmin 3. Because I want
Yeah,
Pikmin 4.
buy Pikmin 3.
So yeah, thank you for listening and bye Pikmin 3. Bye.